Welsh rabbit sounds like the kind of dish that should contain meat. The name feels old, specific, and oddly literal, as if it must refer to something once common and now forgotten. But there is no rabbit in it at all. At its most basic, it is simply melted cheese on toast, and that is exactly what makes it so interesting. A dish this small should not come with a name this strange, yet people have been repeating it for centuries. Later, many even began calling it Welsh Rarebit, as if the original name had become too confusing to leave untouched. So this is not just a story about a simple comfort food. It is a story about how one ordinary dish ended up carrying a linguistic mystery, a cultural stereotype, and a history far larger than the meal itself. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. At its core, it was just cheese on toast. Strip Welsh rabbit down to its essentials, and it is almost surprisingly plain: toasted bread, melted cheese, and sometimes a little mustard. The mystery was never really in the ingredients, it was in the name. One of the best-known early printed recipes appeared in 1747 in Hannah Glass's The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy. The method was simple: toast the bread, toast the cheese, place one on the other, brown it, and rub it with mustard if you like. That was almost the whole dish. No rabbit, no hidden filling, no trick underneath. And that simplicity matters. Welsh rabbit was a humble way to turn bread and cheese into something warmer, fuller, and more comforting. The food itself was easy to understand. The name was the part that stayed behind like a riddle. So if the dish was this simple, why did the name become the complicated part? The name came before the explanation. That question becomes more interesting the moment the name enters the written record. One of the earliest known references appears in the Journal of John Byrom in 1725, where he mentions eating Welsh rabbit in a tavern. What stands out is not only how early the phrase appears, but the fact that he does not explain it. He writes as though the term was already familiar. That suggests the name had been circulating before anyone felt a strong need to define it carefully. Then, in 1747, Hannah Glass gave the dish a much clearer printed form. By that point, Welsh rabbit was unmistakably cheese on toast. Yet the oddity remained. It was still called rabbit, even though rabbit was nowhere in sight, and Welsh rabbit was not alone. Early cookbooks also included Scotch rabbit and English rabbit, both of them rabbitless as well. That matters because it suggests rabbit was not functioning purely as a literal ingredient label. It may have worked more like a category name, a naming habit, or simply a culinary phrase people understood in its own time. In some sources, what seems to make it specifically Welsh is the mustard. That detail does not solve the mystery, but it does sharpen it. The name came first. The explanation never fully caught up. So if rabbit did not describe the ingredients, perhaps the more revealing word was Welsh. Why it was called Welsh? Here the evidence is still incomplete, but it is stronger. No surviving source gives a neat, official explanation for why the dish was called Welsh rabbit. No one seems to have written down the moment the name was formed and why it made sense, but the word Welsh does not appear to be random. There is a cultural trail behind it. In Welsh, baked or roasted cheese is cos pobi. Long before Welsh rabbit appeared clearly in printed cookbooks, the Welsh already had a reputation, at least in English writing, for enjoying toasted cheese. That reputation shows up surprisingly early, not only in direct references but in jokes and comic stories. By the 16th century, English writers were already treating the Welsh fondness for roasted cheese as something recognizable enough to use in literature. That does not prove, beyond doubt, that the dish was named Welsh rabbit for exactly that reason. But it does make the word Welsh feel much less arbitrary. The name may have grown out of an existing cultural association, rather than from one clearly documented culinary invention. In that sense, the label may reflect less the birth of a recipe than the persistence of a cultural image. And that is often how these things survive. History does not always preserve a clean origin story. Sometimes it leaves only fragments, but fragments can still reveal a pattern. In this case, they suggest that the dish carried not only ingredients but also a way of seeing the people associated with it. That makes the Welsh part at least partly understandable. The harder part is still rabbit. Rabbit was the part no one really understood. This is where the story becomes much less stable. Many explanations have been offered for the word rabbit, but none of them feels entirely secure. Some Victorian writers claimed the name reflected poverty, that the Welsh could not afford rabbit, or were somehow prevented from hunting it, so cheese on toast became a substitute. It is a tidy story, and that is exactly the problem. It sounds more like the kind of origin people invented later because it felt satisfying than one preserved by solid evidence. A more plausible possibility is that the term may have been teasing, even mildly dismissive. In earlier English usage, the word Welsh sometimes appeared in expressions suggesting something makeshift, inferior, or second-rate. From that angle, Welsh rabbit may have been a joking label for a dish that stood in for something grander without actually being it. But even that theory does not explain everything. If the term were only a jab at the Welsh, then the existence of Scotch rabbit and English rabbit complicates the pattern. The name refuses to settle into one explanation, and that may be the most honest place to stop. Sometimes a name survives not because it is logical, but because it lasts. People keep using it after the original joke, reference, or reason has gone missing. What once felt obvious can become puzzling the moment the context disappears, and once that happens, language often starts trying to repair the problem itself. How rabbit became rarebit. That may be exactly what happened here. The earliest printed form is rabbit, not rarebit, which suggests rarebit came later as an adjustment rather than as the original word. At some point, people seem to have become uncomfortable with a name that sounded too literal for a dish that clearly contained no rabbit at all. So the word began to drift. Rarebit may have emerged through pronunciation, mishearing, spelling habits, or simple pressure from common sense. The precise root is unclear, but the pattern is familiar. When people no longer understand a word, they often reshape it into something that feels easier to accept. Language smooths over what has become awkward. It edits what no longer seems to fit. By the time rarebit became common, the dish itself was still almost the same thing it had always been, but the name had started changing to suit a world that wanted it to sound less absurd. The mystery did not disappear. It simply changed shape. First, the dish kept a strange name. Then the name itself started mutating under the pressure of misunderstanding. While that was happening in language, the food on the plate was also changing, though in a much more tangible way. The recipe changed, but the dish stayed the same. The earliest versions of Welsh rabbit were almost bare in their simplicity. Later, the dish grew richer. Cheese was melted with butter, milk or ale, and mustard, sometimes with cayenne, garlic, or horseradish. By the Victorian period, it often looked less like cheese placed on toast, and more like a smooth, hot cheese mixture poured over it. But the heart of the dish stayed the same: bread and cheese, turned into something warmer, softer, and more satisfying than either ingredient alone. The method changed, the comfort did not. Even the timing mattered. Welsh rarebit was best eaten immediately, while the cheese was still hot and flowing. Leave it too long, and the texture would tighten. That small detail says a lot. Simple foods are often defined not just by what they contain, but by the exact moment they are served. That may be why the dish lasted. It was easy to make, easy to adapt, and direct in its appeal. It did not need to become elaborate to survive. From pub food to cultural symbol, Welsh rabbit seems to have started in ordinary places such as taverns, but it did not stay there. Over time, it moved into cookbooks, private homes, and even more polished dining rooms. Its strength was not sophistication. It was almost the opposite: hot, rich, filling, and easy to serve. That flexibility helped it travel. A dish this simple could be pub food, household food, or something served in refined spaces without losing its identity. Then it gained a second life that had almost nothing to do with taste. For a long time, people associated late-night cheese with uneasy sleep and vivid nightmares. Because Welsh rarebit was often eaten as a late supper, that superstition attached itself to the dish. Its strangest afterlife appeared in dreams of the rarebit fiend, where Welsh rarebit became linked to bizarre nightmare visions. By then, it was no longer just food on a plate. It had become a cultural trope, something people kept alive by eating it, joking about it, and turning it into a story. And that is the real surprise. A dish that began as little more than hot cheese on toast ended up with a life far beyond the plate. More than melted cheese on toast. At its simplest, Welsh rarebit is still just melted cheese on toast. But that is exactly what makes its story so surprising. A dish this small ended up carrying a strange name, an uncertain origin, a shift from rabbit to rarebit, and an afterlife far beyond the plate. Because simple things do not last for centuries on usefulness alone. They last because people keep repeating them, renaming them, misunderstanding them, and attaching meanings that go beyond the thing itself. So the most interesting thing about Welsh rarebit is not that it solves a mystery. It is that it preserves one. A small dish made from bread, cheese, and heat somehow carried forward old jokes, old assumptions, and old habits of language. And maybe that is how many simple things survive. Not by staying perfectly unchanged, but by staying familiar enough for each generation to carry them forward. And that is what makes Welsh rarebit more than just cheese on toast. It is a reminder that even the simplest things can carry strange names, old habits, and pieces of history that survive longer than anyone expects. If you enjoy exploring the hidden stories behind ordinary things, subscribe to the channel. There is always more history hiding in the objects, foods, and details people usually overlook.